Test. All right, everyone wants to take their seat. We'll get started here in about a minute. All right. Thanks everyone for attending tonight's I-29 Exit 71 Interchange Modification Study Public Information Meeting number 2. My name is John Wiggin. I'm a consultant project manager of the HDR, and I have a 30-minute presentation here before we break out into the open house portion for the remainder of the evening. So first, a couple quick housekeeping items. If you haven't done so already, please sign in at the front table. Also, up there is a comment card and informational handout. The study website is I-29exit71.com. So all the information you see here at tonight's public meeting, including the boards, recording of this presentation, will be posted to that website. The second public meeting is similar to the first in that it's a hybrid type meeting. Now we have tonight's in-person component, and we also have a virtual or online component as well that can be accessed through that study website. The main thing I want to stress is that both options provide the same information. In fact, you probably get a little bit more of detailed information online. So throughout the study, as well as tonight, there's several methods to provide feedback. You can submit your comment cards before you leave here tonight. You can submit comments directly through the study website, as well as reaching out to either of the study contacts. The one thing that we do ask is that you provide comments by December 17th. That allows us to move into the final phases of the study. So the purpose of tonight's public meeting is 4 items. The first one is to provide a brief study update. Number 2 and 3 are to present refined alternatives and preliminary recommendations for both the I-29 Exit 71 interchange as well as I-29 mainline. And the 4th item is to gather feedback and answer questions. And that's really the purpose of tonight's open house at the conclusion of the meeting. Input from this meeting will aid the study team in further refinement and evaluation of these alternatives, as well as feed into determining final recommendations. So South Dakota Department of Transportation is the lead agency for the study, and at the onset, they organized a study advisory team that's made up of representatives from the DOT, Federal Highway Administration, the Sioux Falls MPO, Lincoln County, City of Harrisburg, and City of T. DOT also retained the services of the consulting firm HDR to help them deliver the study. And study contacts, again, myself, John Wiggin, consultant project manager of the HDR, and Steve Graham, who is the project manager with the South Dakota DOT. So a little bit of background to how we got to where we are today. Back in 2018, the DOT completed the I-29 Exit 62 to 73 corridor study. And in that study, they identified operational and safety needs to address at the Exit 71 interchange, as well as mainline capacity and pavement condition needs on I-29. So within that study, that's where they developed a lot of those initial concepts, went through preliminary evaluation, further refinement, and ultimately identified a number of recommendations of alternatives to carry forward to subsequent study. The DOT also identified a future project, which they have planned for fiscal year 2028, that includes the reconstruction of I-29 mainline from exit 68 northward through exit 73, as well as reconstruction of the I-29 exit 71 interchange. So based on that planned 2028 project, we moved here into this interchange modification study, and we're focusing on I-29 from 85th Street southward exit 68 and the 273rd Street corridor, which includes the exit 71 interchange between 470th Avenue and 471st Avenue. So the project purpose and need for this planned 2020 project, the purpose includes to preserve transportation assets, provide for the reliability and efficiency of the transportation system, and provide consistency with transportation planning along the I-29 mainline from exit 73 to exit 68 and on the County Highway 110 or 273rd Street through the exit 71 interchange. And that purpose is looking to address a number of primary and secondary needs, as well as a few goals and objectives. From a primary needs standpoint, we're looking to address traffic operations, that as traffic volumes continue to grow in this interchange, as well as along the I-29 mainline, both due to development in the surrounding area, as well as just the general traffic growth along the I-29 corridor, Also looking at addressing road surface conditions here within the study area. Secondary needs include safety, particularly here within the interchange, that there are some safety needs that we're looking to address based on crashes that occurred over the last several years, and also improving the interchange to meet current design standards. A few different goals and objectives include incorporating multimodal travel through the interchange, also looking at regulatory compliance as we coordinate with regulatory agencies throughout the process, as well as minimizing environmental impacts. So specific to this study, the goals are threefold, and that includes first to develop an Interchange Modification Justification Report, or IMJR, and that is the report that recommends the most technically feasible interchange alternative as part of the DOT's formal request to Federal Highway Administration to modify the Exit 71 interchange. The second goal is to determine the southern extent timeline for additional lanes on I-29. So that previous 2018 Exit 62 to 73 corridor study identified a need for 3 lanes on I-29 from Exit 68 northward, but the timeline, particularly from Exit 71 south to Exit 68, is a little bit, needed additional analysis to understand where that timeline should be. Third item is to develop environmental documents and analyze alternatives. So this is a process where we analyze potential environmental impacts for each of the alternatives, and we work towards developing that preferred alternative that we ultimately carry into design. So overall project schedule, currently we are in the interchange modification study and environmental study. We expect that to last until summer or fall 2022. At that point, we will transition into design, and that'll take us up until construction. We anticipate construction to start in fiscal year 2028, and we anticipate a 2-year project to reconstruct the I-29 segment within the study area, as well as reconstruct the Exit 71 interchange. So the next several slides, I want to focus in on Exit 71 interchange alternatives. I'll start with a brief overview of the alternatives that we're looking at as part of the study, and then we'll get into the preliminary screening and recommendations portion of the presentation. So first off, from that Exit 62 to 73 corridor study from 2018, we carried forward 3 different interchange types. Those included compressed diamond, a single point interchange or SPI, and a diverging diamond or DDI. And across those 3 interchange types, we're also looking at 2 variations for each. One that keeps I-29 under 273rd Street, which is similar to what it is today, or whether we flip and I-29 goes up and over 273rd Street, similar to what we see just to the north at Exit 73. A couple things I want people to remember here is that the Exit 71 interchange alternatives were designed to meet current design standards, and also they were designed to meet what we have for forecasted year 2050 traffic volumes. So these volumes that we're looking at incorporate the development in the surrounding area, just general traffic growth, not only on I-29, but also on 273rd Street. So the first interchange alternative of the 6 that we're looking at is a compressed diamond with I-29 going under 273rd Street. And I'd like to call your attention to the narrow orange rectangle there in the center of the interchange. That is the bridge of 273rd Street going up and over 29. And I think one thing just to keep in mind here is remember the size of that structure. From an overall footprint standpoint, it's very similar configuration to what's out there today. And one of the benefits we found from both an operations and safety standpoint is that with this interchange type, the intersections within the interchange can open and stop controlled intersections. And then they can become signalized as traffic volumes continue to grow and traffic signals are warranted by those volumes. So from a comparative construction right-of-way costs, using today's dollars, this interchange alternative is around $20.5 million. And a lot of that is due to the small size of that structure on 273rd Street over I-29. And that contributes to this interchange alternative being the least expensive of the different alternatives that we're looking at. Second alternative is a compressed diamond with I-29 going over 273rd Street. So again, from the big picture perspective, very similar configuration to the previous alternative as well as what's out there today. Same benefits from an operations and safety perspective at the rate terminal intersections. In this instance, we have I-29 going up and over 273rd Street. That requires 2 structures on I-29. And that's one of the primary elements that contribute to the increased cost for this alternative at around $25 million. Moving to the third alternative, this is the first of the single point interchange or SPI, and this has the I-29 under option. Single point is that interchange type where the ramps are pulled in tight to a single signalized intersection at the center of the interchange. One of the benefits of a single point is that it provides a greater separation between that central signalized intersection and the next adjacent intersections because everything's pulled in tight. However, one of the drawbacks, in this instance, it's a very notable drawback, is the large structure required with this interchange. So if you remember what the structure size was with that the compressed diamond, the 273rd Street over I-29, and now you can see the structure size that's required with the single point interchange considerably bigger. And that is one of the primary contributors to this alternative being the highest cost of all the alternatives at around $33 million. Looking at the single point interchange with I-29 over, again, very similar footprint from the previous single point, a lot of the same operational and safety benefits and spacing benefits that we see with the other single point as well. In this instance, I-29 is going up and over 273rd Street. It requires two structures. So just with the size, with those two structures combined, we do see a decrease in the cost for this alternative. So still at the upper end of the range we're looking at around $29.5 million. But just due to the length of the structures on I-29 as well as the overall earthwork that would be required to flip I-29 and 273rd Street, we're still upwards of that $29.5 million cost range there. So the fifth alternative is the first of the diverging diamond interchange, or DDI. And this is that interchange type where traffic is crossed over to the opposite side through the interchange. Traffic is crossed over at the two crossover intersections on either side of I-29. Those would open as signalized intersections. All other movements throughout the interchange would open as either yield control or free movements. So from a traffic operations perspective, DDIs work pretty efficiently. However, one of the drawbacks with this alternative is that it requires two structures over I-29 on 273rd Street. The overall DDI footprint also provides the least separation from adjacent intersections. So you can see this footprint is notably larger than some of the other footprints we're looking at with the other interchange types. And those are the two items that really contribute to this comparative cost around $25.5 million, which is kind of that mid to lower range of the costs that we're looking at. And then finally, the diverging diamond or DDI with I-29 going over 273rd Street. So a lot of the benefits and drawbacks that we talked about with all the other alternatives apply here as well. This instance, again, we're kind of at that upper end from a comparative cost standpoint, around $30 million. And that's just due to the multiple structures on I-29, the amount of grading and earthwork required to complete the flip of 29 and 273rd Street, as well as the overall right-of-way impacts. So moving from those alternatives, next I want to talk a little bit about the interchange alternative evaluation screening process. Evaluation criteria was summarized in 7 different categories. So those categories that we looked at first was conformance with plans and how well do each of these alternatives align with previous planning studies completed to date. Second item is compliance with current design guidelines, that are the alternatives developed with current design guidelines. Third item is operational performance in terms of traffic operations within the interchange. Fourth item is safety in terms of the expected reduction in crashes based on safety improvements incorporated in these alternatives. Fifth item we look at is potential environmental impacts. Sixth item is constructability and maintenance of traffic in terms of overall construction duration, the ability to maintain traffic during construction, as well as complexity to construct. And the 7th item is a catch-all type category with other traffic considerations, which includes a number of different things that we discussed with the state advisory team, as well as based on comments received in the first public meeting. So with that, we developed an evaluation matrix, which you can see there on the right. And for each of those interchange alternatives across the 7 categories, we rated those from 5 being the top rating and 1 being the lowest rating. And using that evaluation matrix, it also allows us to assess the ability of each alternative to meet the preliminary purpose and need of what we're really looking to address here as part of this project. So we also developed a 3-step screening process. So you can probably get a good idea based on the evaluation matrix, kind of which way we're leaning already. But we developed that 3-step screening process to sequentially compare and eliminate alternatives as we work through this evaluation. And those 3 steps include first looking at whether we go I-29 over or I-29 under 273rd Street. Next step is we look at interchange type. And then finally, we look at 273rd Street alignment and whether we need to look at potentially offsetting or shifting 273rd Street to the south. So here is step 1 within that screening process. Again, looking at whether we go I-29 under or over. One of the primary drivers for looking at I-29 going over 273rd Street was associated with that potential need for a grade raise, raising I-29 over 9 Mile Creek. There's been a lot of recent flooding. There's been some risk or concern about potential overtopping of I-29 in this area. So we looked at this in greater detail, looked at existing floodplain models, looked at floodplain models that were in development, and we found that there really was no a significant grade raise was not required at 9 Mile Creek. So therefore, there is not necessarily a need for I-29 to go over 273rd Street. I-29 can go under 273rd Street based on that finding there at 9 Mile Creek. So with that, we looked at the overall benefits and drawbacks of whether I-29 goes under or over. And we found that the I-29 over alternatives, that those drawbacks outweigh the benefits. And some of those key drawbacks included the potential for WAPA transmission line impacts and associated costs, increased construction costs of doing the flip, potential 9 Mile Creek structure impacts, long construction duration and access impacts, greater environmental impacts, as well as the need for multiple structures on I-29. So that leads us to HDR's recommendation to the study advisory team is that the I-29 under interchange alternatives be carried forward to step 2, and the I-29 over interchange alternatives be eliminated from further consideration. So that moves us into step 2, again, carrying forward the I-29 under alternatives of the compressed diamond, of the single point, of the divergent diamond interchanges. And we really want to focus in on looking at those differentiating benefits. So we used those 7 categories that we looked at in the evaluation matrix and compared those across the different interchange alternatives, which also included the no build or do nothing alternative. And so going through those categories, the first 2 items again were conformance with plans and compliance with design guidelines. All 3 interchange types conform with plans, that they were alternatives that were developed in that 2018 exit 62 to 73 corridor study, carried into this study for further refinement. All 3 interchange types comply with current design guidelines. Third item is operational performance in terms of intersection delay and interchange travel time with regard to level of service, as well as the long-range capacity within these interchange alternatives to accommodate traffic growth even beyond what we analyzed as part of the study. And this was one of those where the compressed diamond really stood out. A lot of that has to do with its ability to grow with traffic volumes. It can open and stop control. As volumes continue to increase, those ramp terminal intersections can be signalized. It's also very conducive to the traffic patterns, particularly those higher commute patterns that we see in this area between the Harrisburg and T areas and northward into Sioux Falls. So with this one, the operational performance, the compressed diamond gets the check mark for this item. Next item is looking at safety, and that's that comparison of predicted number of crashes in terms of the expected reduction in crashes compared to the no build or doing nothing at that interchange. And we found that all 3 interchange alternatives provide notable benefit from a safety perspective and in that expected reduction in crashes. So all 3 alternatives get the check with this category. And we narrow in a little bit closer. A single point interchange does provide a slightly greater benefit from a reduction in fatal and injury crashes. And the compressed diamond provides a slightly greater benefit when we encompass total crashes. So looking at the 5th category, potential environmental impacts, that none of the interchange alternatives that we're looking at have any significant environmental impacts. That for the most part, we were able to work within existing right-of-way. Footprints are very similar across the different interchange types. The single point did have a slightly greater benefit in terms of minimizing those impacts, due in part because those ramps are pulled in tight to the central signalized intersection. It minimizes those impacts with related to right-of-way, wetlands, and floodways. So in this instance, that one does get the check for this category. Then finally, the last two. The first one, constructability and maintenance of traffic during construction in terms of construction duration, ability to maintain traffic during construction, as well as complexity to construct. This was one where the compressed diamond stood out across all three of those categories. Next category, the final category is looking at other traffic considerations. And we looked at a number of things within this, but there's two I want to highlight. The first one is overheight trucks. So there is some concern that anytime a crossroad is going over I-29, what do you do with an overheight truck? Especially some of these bridges have been struck from time to time over the last few years. In this instance with compressed diamond, those trucks could operate similar as they do today, that they can exit on the off-ramp, go up to the compressed diamond, that ramp terminal intersection, then continue through the intersection back on the on-ramp and continue on their way. That option is not available with the single point interchange and the DDI. That overheight trucks would be required to find alternate routes or detour routes around this interchange. The other item is scale of cost and operational need. And this is something that we received comments on at the previous public meeting, where the comments indicated that the cost of the compressed diamonds, that lowest cost alternative, seemed to align better with the operational and traffic needs at this interchange. That we're not anticipating really significant volumes here, but something needs to be done. And maybe that compressed diamond is more in line with what needs to be done from a cost perspective when we look at traffic operations. So with those considerations, the compressed diamond also gets a check mark for that last category. So that leads us to the recommendation here at step 2. So with consideration of those key differentiating benefits, as well as the overall ability to meet the preliminary purpose and need, HDR's recommendation to the study advisory team was that the compressed diamond with I-29 under be carried forward to step 3, and the single point interchange and DDI with I-29 under be removed from further consideration. So that moves us here into step 3. So again, bringing forward that compressed diamond with I-29 going under 273rd Street, we wanted to take a closer look at 273rd Street alignment and really focusing in on three key considerations. The first one being maintenance of traffic during construction. So the alternative that you see up here, the existing bridge is constructed on alignment. So essentially that bridge is reconstructed where the existing bridge is today. So traffic would not be able to be maintained across I-29 during removal and construction of the new bridge. So we want to look at a few options that shift that south. That allows us to construct the new bridge off alignment. Traffic can be maintained on the existing bridge during the bulk of construction. Another consideration we look at is potential right-of-way impacts, especially as we start to shift 273rd Street further to the south. What does that do from right-of-way impact to the southwest, the southeast, or the northeast quadrant? So that's certainly a consideration here moving forward as well. And then finally, what to do with the Kenworth Place intersection area as well as with Ironworks. And so that gets into Federal Highway Administration has control of access requirements that requires 100 feet of no closure extending back from all elements within each of the interchange intersections. So in this instance with the compressed diamond, we had a westbound right turn lane at that northbound ramp terminal intersection. So the control of access, 100 feet of no access, extends back from the start of that right turn lane and goes through the Ironworks Avenue intersection. So that requires us to close that access as part of these interchange improvements and incorporate access to 273rd Street between 273rd and Ironworks Avenue by some sort of rearage or frontage road connection. So when we start looking at the frontage road and rearage road connections, there's a few things to keep in mind. And a lot of that is centered around where that spacing between 273rd Street and that first intersection on Kenworth Place. DOT does provide some guidance. They recommend 150-foot minimum between 273rd Street and that first frontage road intersection. They also note that 300 feet is desired. We also want to look at queue storage, particularly in this instance where you have southbound Kenworth Place. As that starts to back up, potentially, like in the morning commute, or morning when people are leaving the area, there's that potential of blocking the frontage road if that frontage road is too close to 273rd Street. By blocking that, that leads to the potential risk of traffic backing out onto 273rd Street, creating operational and safety issues. And then the third item is, there's a lot of large trucks out in this area, so it's making sure that these options can accommodate Rocky Mountain Double or large truck turning movements across all the intersections with these options. So based on that, we created 4 different options looking at this 273rd Street alignment. The first 2 are rear edge road options. This first one is existing alignments, and the one we've previously shown in the various alternatives. It requires a rear edge road, as trucks would not be able to make the turning movements if we incorporated frontage road at this location. So one of the benefits of a rear edge road connection is you would be able to achieve the greatest separation between 273rd Street and that first intersection on Kenworth Place. However, there are a few drawbacks. One of those with this alternative is that it does not maintain traffic during construction, since we're reconstructing the new bridge in the place of the existing bridge. And you also have those potential right-of-way impacts wherever the rear edge road may go. So the second option is also a rear edge road option. And in this one, the new bridge is constructed 6 feet to the south of the existing bridge. So we're looking at maintaining as close to the existing alignment as possible, but we're offsetting the bridge to allow traffic to be maintained throughout the interchange during construction. Again, similar rear edge road related benefits and drawbacks with the greatest separation, as well as the drawback of potential right-of-way impacts with that rear edge road. So the final 2 options that we're looking at are both frontage road options. This first one is a 55-foot bridge offset. So we extend the spacing between the existing bridge and the new bridge is approximately 55 feet. And this reflects kind of that minimum spacing to accommodate those large trucks over at the frontage road at Kenworth Place. That those trucks could be able to make that turning movement. So that's kind of that baseline alternative for the frontage road. The benefit is, again, we have the offset, we maintain traffic during construction. Drawbacks, however, we are at a very minimum spacing between the frontage road and 273rd Street. And while the trucks can make those turns, oftentimes it could be very difficult or challenging. We also have right-of-way impacts as we continue to shift 273rd Street south of the existing alignment. And then finally, the fourth option is the 80-foot bridge offset. And this one offsets the new bridge 80 feet from the existing bridge. And really the goal with this was to achieve 150-foot separation over there at Kenworth Place between the frontage road and 273rd Street, which is the DOT recommended minimum spacing with the frontage road. So a couple other benefits. Again, we maintain traffic during construction. We have that increased 150-foot spacing, less of a potential risk of blocking access to the frontage road. So a little bit of a benefit there as well. Drawbacks, again, as we continue to shift 273rd Street to the south, we increase right-of-way impacts on that south edge of the corridor. So here to conclude step 3, that currently the 273rd Street alignment recommendation for the compressed diamond I-29 under alternative has not yet been developed. This is one of the things that, as we talked with the site advisory team, that we wanted to present these options to you all, gather your feedback on what you see with any of those options. We have a number of questions that if you have anything that you'd like to share with us. Some of those questions related to these options include, if you have a preference for rear edge road or frontage road, and why? If there's any potential impacts to your travel, property, business associated with any of these options. If you have any specific needs on type and size of trucks using these intersections, we'd certainly like to know that. And also, we'd like to understand the importance of maintaining access during construction, both across I-29 as well as between I-29 and 273rd Street. But all that information will help us in that, again, kind of that final refinement, evaluation of alternatives, and then ultimately towards our final recommendations for this interchange. So that concludes the interchange. I have a few more slides talking about I-29 freeway alternatives. I'll touch on a number of lanes, alignment options we're looking at, as well as intelligent transportation system or ITS options. So the first is in terms of number of lanes. It's from that 2018 Exit 62 73 corridor study. Like I said, they identified that need for 3 lanes at some point in the future from exit 68 northward. And within the study, we confirmed that, particularly from exit 71 to the north. Between exit 73 and that planned future 85th Street interchange, we note that that section should look like a 4 or an 8 lane section, 3 through lanes in each direction, then outside auxiliary lanes that tie the ramps between the 2 interchanges. So very similar to what you see throughout the Sioux Falls Metro when you're kind of at the more closely spaced interchanges. Between exit 71 and 73, we continue a 6 lane section, 3 lanes in each direction through that area. And then south of exit 71, again, that's kind of where that question was. That with that 2020 project, do we construct 4 lanes or 2 lanes in each direction and defer that 3rd lane to a future project at some point in the future? Or do we construct all 6 lanes as part of that 2020 project? And HDR's recommendation for that was to construct 3 lanes in each direction for a full 6 lane section from exit 68 northward through exit 71 as part of that planned future 2028 project. And that's based on a number of things that we looked at. One of those was kind of an interim capacity needs. And we looked at traffic volumes, 10, 11, 12 years out from construction from that 2028 project. And we found a few segments in this area that wouldn't meet study goals from a level of service perspective. For the additional lanes, we also see improved reliability. Maintenance of traffic, not only during construction, but we found that there's significant benefit to maintaining 2 lanes of traffic in each direction throughout construction. That also corresponds with, after construction, we look at maintenance activities or incidents where lanes need to be closed, that those additional lanes are very beneficial with the volumes that we anticipate through this section. And then also from a constructability standpoint. So we're also looking at a few different alignment options around the Lincoln County Airport. The southern end of the runway, you can see there's a light blue kind of triangle shape, which is the airport's runway protection zone. So we've been discussing with Federal Aviation Administration, about what the options are here within this location. The current I-29 interstate lanes, the southbound lanes are located within that RPZ. So we have a couple different options we're looking at. One would be essentially that the new lanes go to the inside, so the median width decreases, but we don't encroach any further into that RPZ area. We stay on alignment with the existing I-29 alignment. The other 2 options we're looking at is a full shift to the east. So all pavement from the new I-29 lanes would be outside of that RPZ, and that reflects approximately a 72-foot shift to the east. And with that, we looked at 2 different median widths, 136 feet and 160 feet. So this is one of those that we don't have a recommendation at this point. It's still to be determined based on continued coordination with FAA. And then finally here, I want to touch on potential intelligent transportation system or ITS elements. And this is one of those things that we're looking at really from a big picture. So we look at things such as closed circuit television cameras, variable speed limits, locations of dynamic message signs, ramp closure gates, as well as road weather information systems. Really to see how it all fits with the planned improvements here as part of this planned 2020 project, but also to kind of serve as a guide. That a lot of these elements would be part of bigger corridor projects or bigger Sioux Falls metro area projects. So we kind of provide a guide essentially how those elements would fit in with this study area. So next steps here, so based on the feedback we get from this public meeting, we will meet again with the study advisory team. That will lead into any sort of final revisions, any final evaluation, which will lead into developing final recommendations that will be documented in the study reports. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for your interest in this corridor study. We look forward to your feedback. They say we appreciate comments back by December 17th, 2021. In the study website, www.i29exit71.com. All the information you see here tonight will be posted to the website. We'll also have a recording of tonight's presentation that should be uploaded here in the next few days. So just looking out a little bit further, we anticipate study reports to be posted to the website as they're finalized kind of in that winter or spring 2022 timeframe. So again, that's all we have. Just want to thank you for your time and interest. And with that, we'll break out into the open house for the remainder of the evening. Thank you.